All right, everybody, welcome to the Barbara Giordano Foundation's YouTube channel. As some of you might already know, the purpose of the foundation, our mission, is to work on support of women who have served. And the second part of our mission, of course, is to educate the public about women veterans. Many of you know, but many of you don't know, that there are over 2 million women veterans in the United States, and that women have been serving in the military, a lot of times without any recognition, since the American Revolution. So we want to, at the foundation, put a face on these women veterans. And so what we are doing each month is to talk to some of these women veterans and to, again, post it on our YouTube channel so you can meet them. And today we're very, very happy to have with us from the great state of Alaska, Dixie Banner. So Dixie, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about you right now. I know that you're married, you have children. Are your children in the military? And then maybe you can tell us a little bit about how did you get into the military and how did you wind up in Alaska? That's a lot of questions.
Right now I live in Alaska. I've been up here many years. I came up here originally through the Navy, like a lot of us in Alaska. Either you stay, you get here, you stay, you retire, you go back, and then you leave the to the lower 48, and you come back. It's the highest per capita veterans. I started in 1980.
Wait, can I interrupt you for a second? So you're saying that Alaska has more veterans than any other state?
Per capita.
Wow, that's really interesting. I bet a lot of people didn't realize that. You know, when people think of Alaska, they certainly don't think of a large population, and I don't think they think of a military presence in Alaska.
Oh, it is. Actually, if you haven't served, it's kind of like Colorado Springs. Either you've been in the military, retired from the military, or per capita, I think Colorado Springs is probably the highest in the city, but in Alaska, we per state. And that was interesting too. We always have veteran discounts. When I went to Illinois and a couple other places for FEMA, I asked for a discount, and they said, what are you talking about? I was kind of like, oh man, wow, they didn't really recognize that. So it was kind of interesting, and I was kind of glad to be back home.
So you're married with children, but you weren't born and raised in Alaska.
No, majority of us haven't. There's very few that are actually native Alaskans, but I came up here like most everybody does, come up here in the military. I came up here when I was young, just got started life in general. I had my degree from MSU, Montana State, and was born and raised in Wyoming. So it's like, well, this is the time to go. Had too many family things going in the background. So I wanted to be independent, do my own thing, and cut the ties. And Alaska was the best place. And then when I got married, my husband was from North Carolina. I was from Wyoming. So this was the happy place. And I said, I love you, but this is where I'm staying. Because I want to raise my kids up here with really good schools.
How many children do you have?
I have two. I have one that's 31, and Garrett will be 28, and he's in the Navy right now. He's looking at chief. He's got 3 in tow. My other one is in Portland, and they both Jim was a corpsman. My daughter-in-law was a corpsman. My son is now a corpsman, and he's looking at chief, and in the next 2 years be ensign.
So tell us about your time in the military. Were you in the Navy also? And did your son kind of follow your lead?
Oh yeah, it was a choice. When they were little, they were told either you go to the military, school, college, or find a job. And they were both enlisted. Garrett enlisted before he was 7. He was 17. I had to sign for him. Jimmy, he signed up, and then he told me, and he says, come, and came home after school, and he says, Mom, I signed up. And I says, I'm going to be in the Marines. Like, and then he says, oh, I know. And it's like, no, Mom, I'm in the Navy, but I'm going to play with the Marines. So they're both green corpsmen, which is the green side, the Marines. And they, like I said, if I had a daughter, I would have told her her to join the military. I look at it as the EEO situation.
So how did you get involved in the military, and how did you select which branch you were going to go into?
My dad was in the Navy. I talked to my teachers in school, and they said he was either the Air Force or the Navy. They both have a lot more technology, a lot more education, more opportunities for your career. And then two, I like the uniform, and I like the structure of the Navy.
Tell us about what did you do when you were in the Navy?
I was anti-submarine warfare. It was
Okay,
tracking
that sounds
submarines.
pretty difficult and awesome at the same time. What exactly does that mean? Anti-submarine warfare. Okay. And by
I
the
was
way, which years did you serve?
86 to 91,
Okay.
which is, I went in right before Walker got put in prison. Remember him when he sold secrets to Russia?
Mhm.
That was the time, and prior to the clearances where they were just giving them clearance. But after that, they clicked in and said, no, you had to have the need to know. And what we actually did was very similar to the book Hunt for Red October.
Which is
Hunt for Red October.
right. But what exactly does that mean? When you
We tracked
say
submarines basically from land. We were passive sonar. And it was a job that you had to have a lot of experience. You had to have a lot of education. It was a very stressful rate, but also you had to be squared away in your. It was training every day. We were overtrained.
this was a difficult task, a difficult job that you had, but also a critical job that you had.
I didn't figure that out until about 20 years later, because I didn't really understand it. All I know is there, and I hated it. But then it really actually offered a lot of experience. But I learned everything was 8 shades of gray, and I'm black and white. I'm a very technical type person, and they could see different things that couldn't see. And so as actually it kind of regards to is I had to learn how to get along with these people, because most of them were very intelligent, and I was from Wyoming, and they're from all walks of life, and they were more like the beginning of all of IT, and people that were into IT. You were intelligent. You were like a submarine, a nuke.
So these are the people that eventually went into Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you were part of that. And when you say, well, I was from Wyoming, you're really just talking about the fact that because Wyoming is not a very populated state with a lot of technology, et cetera, that was kind of, it wasn't California, for example, or New York, where when you think of technology, you think about that. But I think you're being humble, folks. I think she's being humble when she says that, these guys were all brilliant, and they were all, the movers and shakers and that kind of thing. You would not have been in that position if you were not capable of doing that position. And see, what winds up happening is with women, as women, a lot of times we kind of undersell ourselves. It's, well, it's no big deal that I did that. Oh yeah, it was a big deal. Yeah. And, if men were talking about that, if I was asking a veteran from that same experience, in that same position, they would have approached it and told me something entirely different. And so, keep that in mind when you're listening to this and you're watching this video, is that some of what Dixie is saying is typical of what women say. Oh, it was no big deal. Yeah, it was, I was with all these brilliant people. You were there because you were capable.
Yeah.
And so that's the message, I think, more than anything, that has to come across to us as a nation, is that the women weren't second-class citizens. The women weren't given, they weren't sweeping the floors when the men were doing all, putting us, on the, protecting the world from, communism, etc. The women were right there with them doing important jobs. It's just that we undersell ourselves when we talk about it,
We had 1,500 people in the world in our job, in our rate. We knew everybody before you even got to your next duty station. And it's a small world. And I didn't realize this until later on, that why we were doing. And basically, the technology is still there. They just changed the personnel and the rating and various others, but it's still in effect. And that's how we won this Cold War. And when I went back to Washington last year, went to the women's museum, military, there was nothing in Cold War. Nothing was demonstrated, any details, no uniforms, nothing on Cold War, which was kind of disheartening because they kind of missed our era.
Well, I think some of that is because history is written through the eye of the person who's writing it. And so they pick and choose maybe what is important sometimes. And so, we have to look at what is written about different parts of our history and different things that have happened, understanding that everything that is there might not really be everything that is happened. And it's written from the perspective, unless this is a real historian, where historian has no agenda other than to give you the information, give you the facts, and then you take that and you do with it. But history a lot of times is not written that way. History a lot of times is written through the lens of a particular viewpoint. So Cold War, is a period in our history where maybe it's not something that we want to really remember with great fondness, And so I think that's something else to keep in mind, is that I think there are a lot of things that look at just the situation with women. We have 2 million women veterans in this country, and yet most people have never met a woman veteran. And when we think about the military, even today, we still think about the military in terms of gender. And, if you think about, even going back to the Vietnam War, which many people obviously were involved in and many people remember, the fact is that there were women in that war. And a matter of fact, I think there is still, was looking at statistics about the Vietnam War, there are a couple of women who are still missing in action from that war. And yet nobody thinks about, when they think about people who are left behind, they never think about women being part of that group who were left behind. So I think that, again, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you and why I want to talk to other women veterans is to make people understand that women have always been actively engaged in so much of what has happened in this country, and in so much in keeping us safe, and without really much credit.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you is, so
also, the thing is, though, as noted in our conversations, my generation, your generation, broke the ceiling just like they did in the career field in engineering. These girls would not have what they have right now, because at the time when I was in, you had a choice. You had a career with no kids, maybe a husband, or you did your time and you had to make a choice. Do I stay in and have kids and a family and a home, or do I lose out and do a 20-year career, but I have nothing to enhance as a woman, as like normally would have a family, a home, a spouse. And if you did have a spouse, he became the dependent / military spouse, but he was not looked at as really manly. He was kind of like, what happened here? And that was kind of disheartening. And I see now as mil spouses, hey, don't mess with them, because they definitely now have written in stone where we stand, and it doesn't matter what your gender is. I'm the one that's at home. I'm taking care of the family. I make the meals. I'm the frontline support, whereas my spouse wants to make a career. Where in the past, you really had to make choices, real life choices. And I really found that was disheartening, because if woman did really well, why should you have to give up everything?
Well, I think partially because you were a woman. And so, and that was the role that was designated to women at that time. So yes, so thank you for being part of that group that broke that glass ceiling and brought about these changes in the military. But there's still a lot of work to do in the military,
Oh
for
yeah.
sure. And again, it's also a lot of work in terms of educating the public about women in the military. And
Mhm.
so, I'm curious, what happened in the military that you could use in your life when you came out of the military? In other words, what skills did you learn, or what techniques, what did you learn that you actually became part of what you were able to do with your life after the military?
Determination, one, hurry up and wait. You learn to hurry up and wait and always have your backpack full of stuff. So while you have that time, do your homework, do your taxes, do your bills. Never waste time. Time management.
Very
How to,
important.
yeah, how to stand up for yourself. Structure, time as time management, because running 2 kids on my own and working, you had everything from, you get up at 5 o'clock, get the kids ready, have all their stuff packed prior the night before, get them in breakfast, you're in at work at put them at school at 6 and work at 7. And it's a system. Basically, you had to learn a system and processes of being more effective in your management. Then also it's just, how to get along with people, because having been in the military, you get to meet people from all parts of the country, the world, whatever it may be, and you have to learn to collaborate. Whereas if you're like in Wyoming, you meet people 30 miles in radius, and you don't understand. You all think the same, you all act the same. Whereas when you're in the military, you've got to accommodate.
We would probably all get along better if we had some of that experience where we see and we meet other people from not only other parts of the country, but other parts of the world. Because I think that when I travel, and please, if you think something different, tell me, but I see the similarities in us.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing when you travel across this country or you travel around the world, basically people want the same things. People have a lot of the same uh, lens that they look through at life. And, family is family. It doesn't make any difference
Mm-hmm.
necessarily if you're talking about, Argentina, or you're talking about the United States. So I think, I think that that's a really important point, is that exposure to other people.
Well, it makes a smaller world, because my host mom she said from Australia, she said, we're all the same. We all want family. We all have a home. We all want to eat. We all believe in our superpower, whoever God may be. And we all want a simple life. The only thing is we're located in different worlds. We have what we have for food is different, but the bottom line, the basics are all the same. And when you find something like it was in Australia and something was happening, it's like, oh man, I wonder how that might be impacting them. It comes to bring you back home and say, I know that person. You take it a little bit different, you take a different spin on it, because it's like, I know that person, that brings that connection of that event closer to home. Because if you don't have an understanding for that part of the world, just is another place.
Right. And I think it also teaches us that everybody has something to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Every culture has things that are fabulous and that have impacted us. And so nobody has kind of like a lock on that. And I think that we can learn to appreciate one another that way. So the military really has done that for you, has allowed you to have that exposure so that you see things and people differently than you would have if you just stayed in Wyoming, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my husband, my husband now, he was born and raised in not born and raised in California, but in pretty much in Alaska. He, people that are living up here are kind of closed-minded at times because, but being he has been around a lot of people in the military, and now that he's been married to me, it's like told him flat out, you got to accept the military and understand the language and the culture, or we're not going to make it because that's who I am. So come to the plate.
See, I think even the fact that you come from Alaska, a lot of people have so many preconceived notions about Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
And, so I think, it's really important that we have this conversation, not only from the military standpoint, but also just from the fact that you come from a state that so many of us know very little about. Let's face it.
Right.
When we think of Alaska, I think people think of, polar bears and igloos and, it's frozen all year round and like only 5 people live there, that kind of thing. And it's not that.
Mm-mm.
The fact that, as you said, that you have the largest number of veterans there per capita in the state is pretty incredible. And I don't think that there would be too many people, if we had a choice to name a state where we thought there were veterans, that Alaska would be on that list.
Well, what's interesting too is we're from all parts of the country, especially Anchorage is a multicultural city per capita. And the thing is we all work together. When we had the pandemic, and I mean, we came together. We had the earthquake. We came together as a family. We may not like each other or work with each other and all that, but it comes back. We're still there. And I can meet somebody in New York, and I'll have a Humpy T-shirt on there, and it says Anchorage, Alaska. If they're from Alaska, it's like we're like family. It doesn't matter because we all know what it's like to live up here, survive the winters. When we want to do something, for example, I want somebody to work on my car, I can turn around, have my say, you do the transmission, I will do your electrical work by handshake. It's not, well, I have to give you $100 or $200. You do this for me and I'll do that for you.
Well, I think that's part of your geography because you are located where you are, and also because that need to be able to depend upon each other, just like the military, is that you're all together and you need to be able to depend upon each other. When you say you're assigned to do something, you have to do it.
Exactly.
Because somebody else's life depends upon it, or somebody else's depends upon it. So it's a really important lesson, and you take those lessons from the military and it transfers into your everyday life. So there are a lot of things that have you gotten from being in the military that I think have been very positive, right? Is there anything though that your experience in the military you found to be maybe not so positive or challenging? Yeah.
At first, at the beginning, after getting out, it could be, but you look back through your history. For the most part, I'd say 88% was positive. Because if I were to go back to Wyoming, I'd be a wife. I would be mom kind of thing. I'd be, I wouldn't be who I am right now, plain and simple. And so God puts us together for a reason, and God puts us in places for a reason. And so, a lot of times people go through, we have some challenges in the military, it's really pushed our buttons. But if you look at it in the positive way, there was a reason. He makes you want to get stronger. You have to look at kind of cycle at a different spin. You have to take your negatives and turn them into positives.
And that's what you've done from the military to your personal life, is that you used what you learned in the military And so clearly it wasn't all,
Right.
butterflies
It wasn't rosy. It
you know,
wasn't rosy.
rainbows, but that you put it into a perspective and understood that there was something that came out of it that made you stronger and made you and gave you a skill base that now you use in
Mhm.
your career.
Right.
Okay, not only have to say beyond skills, but also personality traits and things like that that allow you to get along with and to be able to work with so many different kinds of people. And kinds, I mean, in terms of, different from different parts of the country or different parts of the world, or, gender, race, nationality, I think, I think, I would think that one of the things that you might get from the military is the fact that you would not look at people with those kinds of, what's the word that I want? Not restriction, but categories, that we
Right.
look at people as people
We
and that
segregate into
groups, we're looking, rather that you look at them as other people who have something to contribute and that we're all valuable. I
Mhm.
think that that's what makes a team, is that, and as a country, that's what we should be, as a team, right?
There's times when I was in the military, there's just something some people just couldn't understand, and because they didn't have the same mindset, culture, whatever, but when it comes down to, we all have to sit at the table and learn how to eat dinner.
But we can't overlook the fact also that there is still a large amount of um, sexual trauma for women
Mhm.
in the military, that there still is, shall we say, a challenge for women to really get ahead, maybe in the
Mhm.
military into certain positions. And certainly, um, those are real,
Oh, there are.
post-traumatic
Yeah, yeah,
stress,
yeah, yeah. And
post-traumatic stress among women. I mean, there's a reason why more women veterans commit suicide than men. I mean, there's a
right.
reason why more women veterans are homeless than men. So, I mean, we can't overlook those things. But I think that part of these conversations hopefully will spur people to understand women's position in the military better and differently, and that we can work together to make the military more um, equal, fairer, and see it more realistically. Right?
Right.
Everybody is not John Wayne in
Mhm.
the military, and with the flag waving behind them and that kind of thing. And all women in the military are not. I hear this fairly often. People will say, "Okay, yeah, there were women in the military, but they were always the secretaries."
Mhm.
Really, you know. And or I would get, yeah, some of them were nurses, but they were never doctors.
Mhm.
So they didn't go into battle. They didn't go, where it was dangerous. So it's a mindset that we have to change. And I think it's through education. And part of the way we do that is by bringing people like you out into the forefront so people can hear your story and see you and understand what you did in terms of all of those years in the military for us.
Right. But you gotta bring back too is we have already been in the military. One of the keys is, as a woman, as a mother, is to educate your kids early in the game that life is not easy, not free, and these are what you're gonna face, because both of my boys were in Marines. Okay, women in the Marines are not recognized. But my son ended up doing work in the command in Portland. He had all women in his office. He learned to appreciate women really quickly. And now his attitude has totally changed. His wife, my daughter-in-law, has had her. She's typical Navy, typical situation, MST, everything else. She's put him into his place. And now he has a more EEO opportunity concept of managing his office and space, because now he realizes, oh man, mom was right.
Education, isn't it? It's about
Yes.
exposure and education and a willingness to learn and to change your
Yeah.
viewpoints about things and be open to things. And I think that the military certainly allows for that. Now, not everybody will embrace that, obviously.
Mhm.
Some people have a hard time in the military, obviously. But I think by and large, there are great opportunities there. And for us as a nation and for us as people, you know,
Also, when you work in, like, for example, I worked for BP and Exxon. They were all engineers, all from Texas. Okay. A lot of them never been in the military. They don't know, understand teamwork. They don't understand it's all about power. And I found that real tough because it's like, hey, I got my degree just like you did. I went to the military. I know how to adapt. I know how to deal with life. I can, if you give me something to do, yeah, I'll do it. But respect me. Just because positional power doesn't cut it.
you think you learned some of that in the military. Yeah. So
Because
I'm
because a
sorry.
lot of these engineers like, oh well, no, 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 no. It's like, no, you I eat chicken noodle soup, and I've eaten macaroni, and I've eaten prime rib, and and meatloaf. I'll take the meatloaf over if I have to. But bottom line is, don't disrespect me as a person, because I have learned all routes of life, and just because you're positional power and you're an engineer doesn't cut it.
Well, I think a lot of times people just assume that you don't have necessarily the same credentials that they
Mm-hmm.
have. And, this came home to me. A couple of years ago, the foundation honored women veterans from World War II,
Mm-hmm.
Korea, and the Vietnam era. And the
Right.
woman who we honored from World War II, she was 100 years old. And when she got up to tell her story, there was a hush over the room because first she just talked about the fact that when she started, well, it was no big deal. I went into the military because, it was the right thing to do and that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then she said, and then, I worked at well, just worked with some pilots is how she said it. And so finally somebody said to her, well, what did you do with the pilots? And she said, well, I taught them how to use radar. She said, because up until that point, she said, until the women got trained, the men were hanging their head out the window looking for, different points, landmarks in order to land and do various things, et cetera. She said, but we learned the radar
Right.
so that we could train them. Her children came up to her afterwards and said to her, but Mom, you never told us that's what you did. And she says, oh, she said, because it really wasn't a big deal. See, that's where women have an issue and we go wrong, is because we think, oh, I did it. It's not a big deal, but it is a big deal because without them having that training and then being able to train those men to use it, that was part of winning that war.
Right. I understand where she's coming from because I was raised the old ways, the old days. Humble yourself. You did it. Yes, we're proud of you. Um, but today is totally different. It's today
It's
is
about,
like, but you have to be humbled, but you also have to be put it out on the table, but yet not be overbearing.
that's true. I think that the issue is to speak the truth.
Right.
If this is what I did, and this is the purpose that it served, and these are my credentials, then what do they say? Don't hide your talents under a bushel basket, right?
Exactly.
Speak the truth. And
Right.
that's what, we hope that women seeing these interviews will understand is that speak your truth.
Right.
If you are an engineer, I'm an engineer. I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did.
Right.
I took the same courses that you did. Or
Right.
if you're a doctor, yes, I am a medical doctor. I'm not a nurse. Nurses are great. Don't get me wrong. They're great. But if you're a nurse, then you say you're a nurse. But if you're a doctor, you
Mm-hmm.
say you're a doctor.
Right.
And you don't let people think that, in fact, you're not, because, women in our society still are not always taught to speak up for themselves. And, I think that's changing, but I
Oh,
think that
yeah.
we all have a role in that, to make sure that we not only hear each other's stories and respect those stories, but pass them on, and make sure that people understand that, first of all, we are more than half the population of this country.
Right,
And so that in itself gives power.
right.
And so we have to make sure that we use our power and make sure we use our voice and respect who we are. So I'm so glad that we had a chance to really talk today.
But
And
I also see that we're sometimes the women we are split on our ways of thinking, but we have to we're a little bit more collective together and making those decisions together. But there's still some things that we need to work out. And being part in the military, um, we have we think a lot more collectively than civilians do. So I see that more and more in politics. But bottom line is, it comes down to, as I always tell my kids, God, home, family, Second Amendment. I am conservative, and I believe that we're here for a purpose, and we get one life. We got to make the best of it. And ultimately, what we do is we have to answer to God. And there's some things I don't want, things I gotta really address to. But for the most part, God gives us an opportunity, and we gotta run with it.
on that note, we're going to end. That's the whole point, is that if the military is for you as it was for Dixie, then take that opportunity and run with it.
Mhm,
And do the best that you can with it, and be proud of it, and
mhm.
speak to truth. Just you did it. It was an important position, whatever your position was, whatever your rank was. Everybody serves a purpose. And I think that that's an important lesson as women listening to this.
The military is a stepping stone. I have to look at it as it's a stepping stone. It's not all your life. And that's where sometimes the folks that have been retiring, that's been all their life. But they've got to stop, and when they retire, realize it was just a stepping stone. It was your next chapter. You have lots of chapters. And all that experience that you gained is for your new life. And it's not just like going from being a student to college to being married to or going to college, whatever. And then nowadays we have a number of careers. It's a new chapter.
And I think that's a really good way to look at it, is that these are stepping stones. Now, people, when they leave the military, if they've made a career out of it, they might decide that they really just want to play golf or something like that.
Mhm.
And that's fine. But that there are a lot of skills that you learn in the military, and a lot of situations that you're put in the military that can certainly translate to the non-military world. And
Right.
so, because I think that sometimes what happens is that, especially for women, they don't see how they can take what they learned in the military, those same skills, and how it can translate into a career path that is fulfilling and exciting and everything. But you have, certainly, and so have many other people. But it is about, I think it comes down to actually valuing yourself,
Mhm.
and seeing that what you had to offer, as they said, whatever your position was in the military, was valuable, and that
Right.
you did it well, and that those skills that you used in order to be successful in the military are the same marketable skills that are important for you in the non-military world.
Right.
So I really thank you for taking this time. We went off on a lot of different subjects and tangents and things like that, but that's good conversation.
But you look at a lot of your CEOs now of large corporations are retired military women. They know how to multitask. It's amazing. I had to learn quick. Go into a meeting, talk about what was supposed to be important to the meeting. And in the meantime, figuring out, okay, what do I got to do? I got to make dinner. I've got soccer, take the boys soccer. I got to do this. I got to do that. Okay. And then by 9 o'clock, it's calling the night. But multitasking, if anything you learn in the military, will bless your life.
So let me reiterate once more. So there are certain skills that you learned in the military that have now translated into your everyday life that has made you highly marketable and successful. So you multitask, you get along with people, you understand them, and you value your worth.
Mhm,
Okay. You take advantage of opportunities to move ahead and
mhm,
to grow.
mhm.
Okay. And you surround yourself with other people who want to actually support you in those goals.
Right.
So, well, Dixie, it was a pleasure speaking to you from Alaska and learning something about Alaska and knowing that there are so many veterans there. That's very exciting and something that I think a lot of people didn't realize. But it was a pleasure speaking to you today, and I want to thank you again for taking the time and you know what? And thank you for your service. We really do appreciate that. Without people such as yourself doing that, we would never be the country that we are today, which is safe.
Yes. And I appreciate you. I love the foundation. I love you. You've been your confidence, your in me, and you've been a great person. I love you.
I didn't pay her to say that, folks. So, but
No, but
anyway,
you do.
appreciate that. Dixie has come to a number of our programs actually through the foundation. And we have something else coming up actually next week, which is called Cookies and Conversation. And because one of the things that we did find with the women veterans is that, especially because of the pandemic, that a lot of obviously that in-person connections that we had were not able to make as readily. And so there is a certain, I don't want to say a disconnect with friends and certainly friends that are far away, but Zoom has allowed us to do that. And so the foundation has kind of taken that on. And so next Thursday, the 9th, the 9th
Ninth, ninth, yeah.
at 7:30, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we're going to do cookies and conversation, which means that we're just all going to get together, women veterans, and talk. And not about anything heavy. It's not a therapy session or anything like that. It's just about connecting with other women veterans and having a good time and having some cookies, because the
Yeah.
Girl Scouts have offered to donate a box of cookies to each person who participates. So how bad can that be? I mean, there's nothing like a Thin Mint or one of those shortbread cookies. So you'll be getting those too, those participants. So if anybody's interested, you can just go to the Giordano Foundation website, Giordano Foundation at .org, and you can see all the different programs coming up. But again, Dixie, I want to thank you.
But also, if it wasn't for COVID, we would never been able to integrate or talk or communicate or collaborate. This is cool.
Well, isn't that the point? We had to learn, as they say, to pivot, which simply means that, we had to make something good out of something that was bad. And I do believe that Zoom was a good thing, because we were able to just for you. The foundation would not have known you and known some of the other women in other parts of the country who regularly come to our programs, et cetera. Because we're based in New York, and the people that were coming to us to do things in person were all from the tri-state area, which means New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. But as a result of COVID and being able to do things through the technology that we have people from Alaska and Hawaii and the Montanas and Texas and coming to different programs and meeting up with each other. So, we have to look at not the glass half empty, but the glass definitely half full. And that's part of the mission of the foundation also. So Again, I want to thank you, and everybody who's watching this, thank you for doing that, and come spread the word about the foundation. And if you have any
I will.
suggestions or ideas, please make sure you get in touch with us. Thanks, Dixie. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
bye-bye.
it.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
You too.